Hey guys, Kasal here. You're about to watch Thorin talk and talk and talk. But it's kinda good, I swear.
Nico, Nico, Nico go to the major, then he wanna go home. Now, when it comes to Nico, I actually think I have a take that's going to blow people's minds, because they might know I've been critical about certain things about maybe Nico's attitude or perception of teammates or how he's navigated his career, things I've thought about maybe about his ego in different time periods. But I do think his actual body of work is unbelievable. And this is one of those topics I just never ever seem to see brought up, precisely because we're in an era of sports and entertainment where it's all about ring culture. It's about who just lifted the big trophy the most times. It's not about how you played, what you played like, who you played with, the context, the era you played. It's none of those things. So when it comes to the GOAT conversation, the greatest of all time in CSGO, I actually think, sadly, the last few years, that conversation has basically just been on a complete standstill, stalemate, because all it was just simple. I mean, everyone already said simple was the GOAT, but it was just Ziwu arrived late in the game, and then he brought with him the most unbearable fans of all time. By the way, I don't know anyone who doesn't think Ziwu was a fucking unbelievable player or doesn't like his game. But I tell you what, and loads of people find his fans the most annoying and don't like them at all. They're the people we hate, not fucking Ziwu, one of the greatest players to ever play any esports game ever. So sadly, since Ziwu arrived, because they spent the last 5 years crowbarring the idea he's better than Simple, suddenly it became as though like the GOAT discussion was Simple versus Ziwu, as people have often tried to imply, like Ronaldo versus Messi. Problem with that, of course, being is you're obviously a biased Ziwu fan, or you just weren't here, because that was never the GOAT conversation. First of all, the GOAT conversation to some degree ended when Simple had his 2018 breakout, because everyone gave it up. Even people in Astralis who were routinely beating him gave up that he is the GOAT instead of, Device in their team who'd won all the MVPs and all the majors and all the rest of that jazz. So already it was actually kind of not much of a discussion. But I actually think if you go back and you look at that time period, yeah, there are other players out there. Like, the real problem is this, by the way. In the contexts all modern sports fans and esports fans use, there is no reason to say Ziwu can even be the GOAT for CSGO. I mean, CSGO's over, but he wasn't the GOAT. Not least because his resume, up until last year, was way behind the others. And then he had a year and a half robbed from online. So did others as well, but they had years before that they could put in. And then that means basically his LAN career was about 4.5 years, if you look roughly. That's not really enough time when you consider he didn't get many of the championships. Wow. Current fans judge it. I don't judge it that way. So the only context for Ziwu was body of work. If you want to say he had 4.5 years of LAN player, where for most of that he was unbelievable, then yeah, body of work can put him in that convo. And maybe compared to the others, he might even have the best body of work outside of Simple. So that one context can put him in a GOAT conversation. But he never was. That wasn't ever going along like that, and no one else ever made that case. The reality is, if you're including resume and length of career and body of work and how great you were and all the rest, and eye test, then actually I would say the real conversation, assuming that you're not doing what I would do, I would actually allow Ziwu in there, as I'm about to say. But I think the obvious four names for the GOAT discussion in CSGO go like this. Get right, Cold Zero, Simple, Device. They all have the majors, they have MVPs, they have years where they're the best. They all have eye test, longevity. They all have reasons why they're absolutely humble. Like, it doesn't matter, by the way, if Olaf Meister, that 1 year in 2015, might have been better than, say, like a Cold Zero year, debatable, obviously. He only did it for a year and a little bit into 2016. That doesn't work. Now, I would personally say, and it's the point of this video, I do think that we actually need to expand that list out and put two more names there, which is obviously Ziwu and then Nico. To me, there's really 6 names can probably be the real discussion if you want to have a great Mount Rushmore type discussion, or you want to talk about who's the best and compare all the year. Also, you notice that covers the whole gamut of the game. Now, sadly, there's a world where Kenny S and Shocks could be on there, but a mixture of shenanigans in the scene and the drama and the politics, and then the fact that they themselves had waning motivation or things outside the game that sometimes sapped their in-game ability. I think it did hurt a bit of their longevity, a bit of their peak value, and then also their resumes are a little bit more sus than some of the other people there. So realistically, it's probably those 6. Beyond that, And like, look, the reason why the NBA, I think, can have 10 people for GOAT is because it's been around like 50, 60 years, hasn't it? Like, the problem in Counter-Strike is it lasted 10 years in CSGO, basically, just a little bit over. So I'm not sure that works. So first and foremost, the reason I'm putting Nico in this conversation, where I believe he deserves to be, hence the video, is because just like Ziwu, his body of work means he demands to be put in this conversation, even if someone who then uses resume, not me, excludes him for that reason. Like, let's talk first of all about how this guy played. And if you took off the nameplates and didn't know what tournament it was, and just looked at his whole career on LAN, this guy is unbelievable. Like, for real, just eye test alone, this is one of the 3 or 4 best players I've ever seen in any role with any gun in Counter-Strike. Yeah, you can keep all your AWPers. They're in this conversation. He's better than most of them. I think even compared to the AWPers, he was better than most, even some of the best AWPers, and impossibly good in general. Like, his peak level is bonkers. His consistency is impossible for a rifler. It's impossible for almost any player. There's only basically Ziwu and Device have done it, and even Device had a year off here and there. His longevity, I mean, it goes hand in hand with the consistency, but like, I'll put it this way. This is where I hate people using HLTV Top 20, because HLTV Top 20 is insanely skewed by your team's success, and therefore things like who's your in-game leader, how good's your org, do they have money to buy players, can they buy players, will they buy players, did you stay for too long, did you sign an extra year's contract when you should have got, all these factors have nothing to do with how you fucking played the game. So I take those out, and look, I will say, if you've played like a third as many games in big events, it's going to be hard for me to put you over certain other names, but if we're looking at the eye test and the body of work and the context of who they played with, I don't care that there were years where they had like Nico 11th in 2016. No, I was back then watching the game. I've done my lists for a bunch of years, especially those early ones, and I've even gone back and rethought it and looked at other factors. And first of all, I had Nico, I think, 3rd in 2016, and man, has that aged well, because for me, there's 1 year in his career where I don't have him top 3. I actually have him top 3 for 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019 was the 1 year I had him 8th that year, because his team just barely made any kind of runs, even though they actually had some good players. Like, that one's the one where I do think his game was a little bit off, and I think a lot of the other problems elsewhere held him back. And there was just some fantastic play that year. That was obviously a year again where some of the Australian players had good years, etc., etc. And then I have him in 2020. I don't care. I think he was top 3. In 2021, I think he was top 3. I think he was unbelievable that year. 2022, people might think, well, the team wasn't as good. It wasn't, but I still think he was around that level. He was still really good himself. And then last year, he was bonkers, wasn't he? Probably the second best player. I think that's actually fair. Worst case scenario, probably the 3rd. So for me, I have 8 years where he has one time he finished 8th, so he's top 8 for 8 years, but he's 7 years top 3 for me. That's how good this guy was. He was unbelievable. And by the way, he's a rifler. That's ridiculous. Everyone else who's in that conversation is Ziwu and Device. They're all AWPers. They're all that really consistent gun that's been the strongest in the game for many, many years. They didn't even nerf the AWP till the end of CSGO, guys. Then you look at his all-around game. This might be the best player ever. How smooth he is, how he takes angle, everything that he does. It's actually like... the joke is, when I was to say to people, play like Device if you're an AWPer, not simple. As a rifler, that's not what I'd say about this guy. This guy wasn't the guy like a Scream where it was like crazy snapping headshot. No, this guy also has like the Device type. This is how you can learn to rifle. He's going to do everything correctly. You just won't be anywhere as good as him. That's all. Because he has insane mechanics and an insane game. Oh, and by the way, part of his all-around game got even better over the years. Now he has like this entry component, as well as like he can do an amazing lurk style. He can AWP if you need him to. Now, look, he's not going to be one of the best AWPers in the world, but he can AWP. He can actually make it effective. He can be good. I just think he is so good with a rifle. I would say not to do that. So I like my reminiscences with Shocks and Forest. I'd sort the same thing where they would go and AWP as like a real primary or on every single time on a certain CT of a map. The eye test is obviously a massive component of this, and I think his eye test is insane. Like, the only player, I'll just say at the outset, the only player I've ever seen who was as good in all respects was Simple. And he's the only person I would say was better than Nico. Like, I even have to debate the Ziwu one, because I do think there were times in Ziwu's career where on the screen he didn't make a mistake, but in the context that sometimes he let the game just come to him. He didn't force the game. I think that was where, and look, that's what Ziwu's improved a lot over the last couple of years, by the way. I think someone like Nico, much earlier on, had that. Now, Nico also maybe had some choking components that Ziwu is comparable to, but just hasn't had as many big opportunities to fail in, sure. But I think in terms of pure eye test, this guy is, like I say, there's only Simple's better. There's only simple clears him in any context. So I think it's insane. I think the overall package looks almost unbeatable. Let's be real. He is the best at clearing angles. He has impossibly crisp aim, hence all those one taps. He also knows how good his aim is and really has that like thing in his mind where he knows if the bullet kills or not, hence why he can stop after the tap instead of just firing. But plenty of players, by the way, they just fire out of instinct or it doesn't register instantly for them. I think his trigger discipline is fantastic. His technique is almost flawless. Again, it's like textbook stuff you teach kids with. Ability to duel, confidence dueling, how he peaks you. There's a reason why his reverse POV is the craziest of any rifler you've ever seen. I don't care what rifler online look dodgy and do crazy Russian Ferrari peaks. This guy was better online against the best teams in the world. That's how bonkers his fucking rifle is. So the context here that we also have to bring in is look at the other players and what they had or what was different about them that's putting them in that GOAT conversation. So notice when I said some of the names earlier, I think most modern fans, because they just didn't see coldzera and Get Right Player, they're really just putting Device, if they look at the resume, and then Zero in terms of modern day eye test, they're putting those two players and Simple against NiKo, right? You do notice 3 of those players are primary AWPers, spent most of their career as AWPers. Now, they can all rifle, but aside from Zero sort of forcing it now and Simple in the latter half of 2019, and Device really early on before he became a GOAT candidate, they're not. They're primary AWPers. NiKo isn't. Well, here's the problem. The AWP skews certain stats. Like, it makes, when you save the gun, well, now you survived the round. Like, that acts like you did something, whereas actually sometimes you didn't do something you had to save because your AWP and your teammates died. It's a one shot, one kill. So it adds a lot more sort of like easy kills in there. The differential breaks all the stats things because you get the kill, he doesn't even hit you with a bullet, therefore you like get what +1, whereas like the rifler guy gets the same kill with a headshot and 2 bullets in the chest or whatever, and then, oh, what's that? Now in comes fucking... He's had 70 health taken off him, though, because the other guy sprayed him, and now he gets killed easily because he has 30 health. The AWPer still has, what, 85 health, 100 health? So I also think as well, long-range factor, you could very easily kill pistols, people without proper guns, especially on certain maps where they're just not going to be able to see you properly. The visibility is going to be worse. You have a scope. So the AWP obviously has all these advantages to it. That makes sense why those players should be on top. So then when NiKo is better than people like Device most of the years of career, in my opinion, better even than someone like Zero at certain points in time, potentially, yeah, at that point in time, you have to just give it up. This guy's unbelievable. Because when you compare him against the riflers, I mean, the riflers, the only ones that can go in his tier is, if we're talking about longevity, it's Get Right coldzera. If we're going to add in things like ability to come up and down or your peak level, then yeah, Shocks or Primal Offmeister, like, those are his competition. And by the way, I'd say he's better than all of those, even though some of them might be better at winning majors or with a team from their country speaking their language and their culture might be better. But would they be in NiKo's situation? I don't know. None of those players, by the way, have gone to the international teams and won the majors as the primary star rifler, right? So what do we even compare at this point in time? Because to me, he's clearly above great riflers that have won majors. So it's not just about that. Like, he's above Rops and Dupree and Flasher and Crims and Snacks. I don't care that he had the odd major where he had a dodgy final or semi-final. That doesn't change it. These guys were in, I would say, arguably more advantageous scenarios sometimes with their teams. And then everyone does give it up that he's the best rifler in CSGO history, right? Well, if we're giving up that he's the best in CSGO history and we admit the AWP is slightly OP, then absolutely he can be the GOAT player. Why not? In the same way as when he didn't use the Krieg and everyone else did, he was still contender for best rifler. He used a fucking AK, which is actually like almost objectively a weaker weapon or worse weapon, especially a money inefficient weapon at the time. And by the way, when I say he can be the GOAT player, if you're taking these kinds of contexts into account, so can IGL, so could Glaive or Carrigan say, well, I was the greatest of all time. Now, yes, then you're asking about things outside of just what you do with the crosshair. And yeah, sure, there's all that, true. Then let's add this in. Never forget in that conversation when you're comparing him against Device and Simple and Zero. Whoa. Remember, Zero, if he really wanted, could have played in a French team his whole career. Device could have played in a Danish team his whole career. Simple could have played in a team that spoke Ukrainian or Russian his whole career. That wasn't even an option for NiKo. He is from a Balkan country, Bosnia. Now, if you don't know, it wasn't until last year that you could actually ever have made a real team from that region that wouldn't have either a player that was a massive liability or essentially would be just wouldn't just be an also running the tournament. I mean, talk about a team that is good enough to house a player like NiKo, to actually give him a chance to win the major and Grand Slams and all the titles in Cologne and kind of eat it as he should deserve for his talent. So if you look at it, he played his entire pro career in teams that aren't from his fucking region. He played with Mouse Sports, German team, but obviously international. Then he played with FaZe, just a totally international squad famously. Then he played with G2, which was part French, then just fully international and fully international since then. In fact, the joke is now in theory it's actually a full majority Balkan team, but it doesn't really count in the same sense, right? Like obviously you wouldn't take a player like fucking Huxley from Denmark and imply he has any connection to a Balkan country or language or culture, would he? So that's an obvious disadvantage. Remember, let me go down the list. Simple won a major in which team? Not with Team Liquid. He could have won Team Liquid. He won with Na'Vi when he was speaking. You can get political if you want, but let's just say Russian for now. Device won all of his majors, not when he was in an IP, when he was in Astralis speaking Danish. Cold Zero won all of his majors when he was in Luminosity and SK, which was, of course, when he was speaking Portuguese, his native language. Get Right won his only major in an IP, speaking Swedish. Now, you'll notice those are the people I'm contrasting him with. And he's never been in their spot with his comfier position as they were in when they had their best ever result. But then you're going to look at NiKo's career and go, where's your equivalent best ever result? He didn't have the same fucking scenario. It's apples and oranges. And then, by the way, this is also something I will always shade in for Guardian. I will always say for Guardian that he has that same break where it doesn't quite count the same way. Kenny S, if anything, should have won 2, 3, 4 majors with all those French great teams. Guardian had a few cracks in it, and a bunch of the times he was an underdog in the final or some other fucked up things happened. And by the way, even though Rops has already won his major, if he hadn't have won a major, I'd have given him the same condition, and maybe I yet will to Frozen if he becomes a truly great player and shows some epic career. By the way, speaking of getting... One of the problems he did have in his career is he did have some amazing help. It's not like he can say like some other players, like, I've just never had any good help with me. No. Like he had Guardian when he still looked prime to me. He looked fantastic in FaZe Clan those first year or two. He has Monacy when Monacy is becoming one of the best players in the world outright and one of the best stoppers. But I will say this, Guardian is someone who was also speaking second language and was in a dodgy situation. Monacy's also speaking second language. None of these people are in their native teams and countries and cultures. And also, it's unfair to do that to him with Monacy, because Monacy in a year or two might be the best player and the God-AWPer. He's like on the brink of it now, and this is like 2+ years in, guys. Realistically, that first year you had Monacy, you shouldn't expect him to win any tournaments. Like, Monacy's still a rookie. Even the second year, he's still getting his feet. Now he's changing coach. He's changed IGL along the way. They've had a teammate change. You've had all these different majors around the world that you've got... We wouldn't say Monacy's a failure for not winning the major those years, right? But then we're going to turn around and go, Nico, you had the help and the other star player you needed to win a major. Well, which is it? Did he or didn't he? I'll give you it on the Guardian one. I do think when he had Guardian and Carrigan, a lot of that has to sit on Nico's shoulders that he didn't win. I told all these players, all these results count. I don't care that years later you'll be like, yeah, but then I couldn't get the right guy and then they were like, the deal for Alex wasn't going. It doesn't matter. These results all count. Now, true. To what degree do they count, in what context, we can discuss that. But they all go on your career, mate. And when you're in these conversations, the problem is, Device doesn't have to tell me some bullshit like, but he didn't get the playoff. It doesn't matter, he got the majors, didn't he? He got the resume, didn't he? He did get the MVPs though, didn't he? Like, he can say he did do those things. Your problem is you're trying to couch and defend why you didn't. Now, look, there are good arguments can be made, but it's always going to look worse than the player who did do it, which is something you've always got to give up, in my opinion. Now, the obvious knock, obviously, is maybe sometimes Nico went missing in a big game / tournament, like the Boston Major Final. I think he could have won that anytime he felt like it. I think at Katowice last year when they won the tournament, I don't think he had that awesome a run, really. I actually think this was one of the ones where, I mean, they won it, but did he win it? I think mostly it was other players having big pop-offs, right? Another issue that's a knock on Nico, if you want to make him the GOAT, is he's had a lot of chances to win. Once you take out the language culture angle, sure, that makes it a bit of a disadvantage. But you look, right, okay, Mouse Sports, he had no chance. Forget that one. Idiots on HLTV even factoring that in. In FaZe Clan, though, let's be real, there was 3 majors you could really have won. You could have won Krakow, Boston, and Face It. Krakow was before you had Guardian and Olaf, but you were still a top 2 team, and you had Carrigan. The problem is they bombed that one completely. E-League Boston... Obviously, that was winnable. You're 1 round from it. And then Face It, there was all that shenanigans with Carrigan and taking off IGL. And then you had to play Astralis, even though it was close. So I would say still possible to win that one. Then you had the whole period without proper IGLs. Now, I don't blame you entirely for that, but I do think that was a clown show, because the problem is, I do think there were people like MSL who you could have gotten in the meantime, but you didn't. So, okay, you fucked that one up. Then you came back after the online period, and we had PGL Stockholm in G2, you had PGL Antwerp, we had IEM Rio, and now we just had Blast Paris. Now, realistically, these were all winnable, right? Like G2 was one of the top 3 teams going into Stockholm. They'd just been in the Katowice final before Antwerp. Before Rio, they'd had like the little run at Pro League where they looked solid and people think, oh, it's actually getting together. Obviously, they hadn't yet won the big tournaments. And before Blast, they'd won 2 massive tournaments. They'd won Blast World and especially, obviously, IM Katowice. Like, these are all tournaments where you're either in a team that's capable of winning it all, or a direct favourite, or at minimum a dark horse. So you had realistically like 7 majors, I think, where he could have won the major. That is pretty damning, I've got to say. You didn't get it done at all. Now, I will say one of those 7 I don't think should be really counted, which is PGL Stockholm, because I don't think that is his fault at all. He was fucking... Aside from simple, he was the best player at that tournament. He was absolutely bonkers. I don't even think they should have been in the finals. I think actually Heroic should have been in the final, but NiKo, just one-man army, just decided, nah, I'm going to the final, actually, and then almost made the final 3 maps, where again, he had no business. That should be 2 maps all day long. And then I'll just throw this in there. I also think he was actually pretty good at Blast Paris, even though that last map, due to some bullshit with the veto, ended up being a nightmare. The rest of the tournament, he was bonkers. He was the reason why they even had the chance to go deep. Go and look at other players if you want to point fingers for that tournament. Now, I will say, I do think he has mismanaged his career, which has denied him the chance to be in the proper GOAT conversation or to be the GOAT itself. Like, I think he stayed in mouse spots for too long and then he stupidly covered for bad teammates where he should have just it's not that he should have defended them or said they were trash. He should just let people do what they were going to do. And if you haven't noticed, you might not like people like me, but I'm brilliant at getting bad players out of your teams, mate, and making sure fans know that they're bad players and that they're the players that need to go. So you got to let us do our thing at certain times. Then there was obviously the Carrigan issue in phase. The grass isn't always greener. You might think I had problems with Carrigan and then I couldn't get these other ones. Yeah, but you could have had Carrigan the whole time. And you know what? Oh, yeah, but like, how could I have known that then I'd have problems? Well, that's your problem. You had him. The joke was when you kick Carrigan, unless fucking Glaive or like maybe one other name's walking through that door, maybe for an idiot like some of these people fallen, I don't fucking know. That's it. If you can't make it work with Carrigan, who is it going to work with? Spoiler, it didn't work with anyone else for years and years and years and years. Now, that whole thing of like, oh, but we couldn't get one. Yeah, but like I said earlier, my problem is you did take Neo and Adren rather than try MSL. Like, that's your fault at that point in time. I also do think when he had G2 that he missed the opportunity that if he'd have worked with Alexi B and X-Stars or Alexi B without X-Stars or Alexi B with JKS and X-Stars, whatever option, I also think that would have been a better long-term trajectory to win the majors. I think that's a missed opportunity. By the way, I said earlier, he obviously could have won a major. I think he played well enough to have won a major or 2. He's played well enough at a bunch of majors. He has a fantastic general body of work and his longevity as an elite player is absolutely insane. So I think at least he deserves to be in the conversation. Why can't Nico be the GOAT? I mean, if I just say rifles only, immediately, isn't he the big name that we're putting forwards? Was it just a game for AWPers? I've had to make a lot of tough choices in my career, but thanks to the support of my Patreon community, the Skrilluminati, I never have to make tough financial decisions. So this video and all the rest on my channel are kindly supported by Ahmed Hadjou, Frisky, Pugnatio, Rajcula, Animosity, Jensen Goh, Tobias Bernasconi, Tosh, Thooorin, and you know it if you've ever heard before, and you'll hear it many times in the future. A special thanks goes out to my main man, Jerry Keys Minion. Do you want to ask a question in my video AMA? Do you want to be part of one of those long discussions where we talk about whatever you like in esports? Do you want teasers, find out who the upcoming guests are going to be? Or maybe you want to suggest a topic for a future Thorin's Thoughts type video? Well, if any of these perks or others appeal to you, put your money where your mouth is today and join the Skrilluminati by joining the Patreon link in the description box below.